One day, Henry was shunting in the yard. His previous train had been delayed by a faulty signal, and the shunting of his next one made him later still. Stupid trucks, stupid timetables, Henry grunted. He was so busy grumbling that he didn't notice that he was getting too close to the buffers until it was too late. "Ooh-ah!" Henry cried out. "Stop, driver, stop!" His driver put on the brakes, but it was too late. Henry was more embarrassed than hurt, but he had damaged his buffers, and he was glad that no other engines had been around to see it. Henry was soon at the works, but a problem quickly arose. "We have no more spare buffers, except for a spare set of Gordons." "Couldn't I use those?" said Henry excitedly. "I mean, I doubt he'll need them any time soon." The foreman agreed, and Henry was soon fitted with a set of square buffers. "So, you really do look like Gordon now," laughed his driver. Henry thought he looked pretty smart himself. Henry puffed home, feeling very proud of his new look. As he made his way back to Vickerstown, he couldn't help but notice many passengers and workmen were admiring his new buffers. "Everyone likes my smart new buffers," Henry thought proudly. Yet his new look wasn't popular with everyone. As Henry neared the station, Gordon had quite a shock as Henry passed by him. But when Henry reached the sheds that evening, the greeting was anything but warm. "Look, 98462. Looks like we were right after all. Henry's trying so hard to be like Gordon. It's pathetic." "Pah! You look too much like me now. People already confuse us as it is. But now it'll be impossible to tell us apart." "No, it won't. My face isn't as fat as yours," chuckled Henry. Over the next few days, Henry's new look made him rather boastful despite his sickly nature. The other engines soon became glad whenever he was away. "Buff, buff, 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 buffers," he sang as he coasted along the line. Everywhere he went, people would wave to him, though they were really waving to Gordon. Henry couldn't care less. "Buff, buff, 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 buffers," he sang. One day, 87546 was waiting at Vickerstown Station when Henry backed onto his passenger train. 87546 began to cackle when he saw him. "Oh, hello, Henry. You know, when I first saw the rake of the coaches, and when I saw you, I first thought it was Gordon. I must admit, I'm slightly disappointed that it's not Gordon, and that it's you. Maybe you should think twice before getting square buffers." "You know what, 87546? I think that you're jealous. Because nobody pulls the local train as fine as I do." "Jealous? I? That's very funny, Henry. Why would I be jealous of you? From what I hear, your trains run late all day." "That may be true, but at least I can assure my passengers a smooth and comfortable ride to their destination, unlike yours, which is why Sir Topham Hatt has you on strict goods duties." "Well, I never!" 87546 huffed out of the station with his long, heavy, slow goods train. "Rotten imbecile," Henry grunted. Just then, the guard blew his whistle. Come on," whistled Henry to the coaches. We're coming! Henry had a nice run. Lots of people waved at him, though they thought they were waving to Gordon. "Buff, buff, 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 buffers!" Henry continued to boast as he puffed along. Soon they neared the terminus. A crowd of people stood on the platform, waiting to catch their train. When they saw Henry, they began to wave as he entered. "Buff, buff, 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 buffers!" Henry sang. Henry was so busy showing off, he did not notice he was getting too close to the buffers at the end of the terminus until it was too late. "Buff, buff, 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 horrors!" Henry cried out. His driver put on the brakes, but it was too late. Henry slammed into the buffers at the end of the station. Luckily, no one was hurt, but Henry had damaged the station buffers as well as his own. Henry wailed in despair. "My beautiful square buffers are ruined." Henry was soon at the works again. He asked the workmen to give him another pair of square buffers, but unfortunately, they had just run out. Henry was once again fitted with regular buffers. Henry never boasted about his buffers again, though for a long time after that, the other engines enjoyed teasing him about his buff, 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 buffers.